What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and in one of my last videos I asked you guys who you think our next Ravage realm boss will be, and you guys have answered, and today I thought, well, let's talk about those heroes, those enemies you mentioned, and let's see who I think is the most likely of those. If you have no idea what Ravage realm is a giant boss fight mode that is at the end of every season so far, featuring a ton of loot. As we can, for example, see here in this video that I made about the Thalassa boss fight. Thalassa was our last Ravage realm boss. We fought her first in the Waves of Intrigue season in the story at the end on the big ship. And then later on she returned to be our enemy in Ravage realm. And now the question of course is, well, do we have a similar scenario here? Do we have a boss that we already kind of met and is returning? Or is it more like season 1 where we fought Zetsahara, a new boss that we've never seen during the story and just appeared towards the end? Anyway, talking about it a little bit is very much so worth it, because as you see on the screen there is quite some loot in here from the last season. For the top 20 there was an Abyssal Essence as you can use to upgrade a hero from plus 20 to plus 25, 15 Stellar Crystals, and the whole cosmetic set that was last time also based on the boss design. And that was quite a gorgeous set that I'm very happy that I didn't miss, because, well, every single bracket that you basically fall down, if you fall out to 20, you lose one piece of cosmetic. And I think, I'm still of the opinion, by the way, that this is pretty tough. I would rather lose like 5 Stellar Crystals than the cosmetics. But yeah, I guess it is motivating to get into the top positions. You can see that was the full set based on the boss design. And that is the one from season 1, from Zetsahara. Not really a boss design, more like kinda-ish, more based on the season. So that is also a question that we have right now. I am not too sure, like with the picks that we have on this list that we're going to cover now, I'm not too sure if we are necessarily going to see a boss-based design for the cosmetics. I think maybe more season-ish. But we'll talk about this more in regard to the bosses in a second. Let's start with you guys' first pick on who could be the enemy towards the end of the season in Ravaged realm. And the first pick, I'll be honest, caught me a little bit off guard. I didn't expect that, but it is Siren. Siren announced as the enemy in the story, a little bit shown as an evil character throughout. Hasn't really made much of an appearance in the story, I have to say. I expected him to be much more of a threat really there, of an enemy, but really there wasn't much interaction with him. At the end, we just noticed that he has escaped, as far as I know, if I haven't missed anything, and then he's just gone. And for such an intriguing character, for a character that I personally, when I saw the first trailer, expected to be like the evil mastermind in the background, that doesn't seem like a fitting end. And while we might see more of a revelation of his skills, of his intrigues in future seasons, for this season it certainly feels a bit lackluster. So I can understand that people might want to see him as like the new Ravaged realm boss, though I have to say I personally don't think that is the case. I think it would be quite weird to have like a hero that we already own also be the Ravaged realm boss. And also yeah, I'll have to be honest, I'm a little bit afraid of his skills. Because fighting the dude, well, that certainly isn't much fun. His giant ult pulling enemies together and instantly finishing them once they fall below the threshold that we just saw there with the little purple markers. Yeah, that is absolutely devastating in PvP. Even blocking our artifacts has made quite an impact, and thus, well, definitely not an enemy that I am very eager to fight, even though he is losing right here against the stage. But that's another story, I guess. But yeah, look at that. That looks mad. You don't want to fight that as a boss. So better that he stays a normal hero and not a Ravage realm boss. Even though story-wise, I'm looking forward to knowing more about Siren, and I hope he makes a big appearance in the next story, or one after at least. Our next entry on the list is actually a character we meet only once, really, towards the end of the story, and it is this dude. We know him from the trailer actually, which is kind of fancy for the short time that we really get to see him, that we saw him in the trailer already. There is no good in-game cutscene that is repeatable, sadly, for this guy, but we meet him at a very interesting location. right down the endless abyss after we are thrown there by Cryanaya. And it is the God of Death, actually. He doesn't really have any classification as an enemy because we really didn't fight him yet. What we fought was the... I think it was called Death Charon. We can take a look at it. And I'm purposefully mispronouncing it here, but that was definitely an absolutely great location there. The Shadowed Charon was really a pretty small boss fight, I'll be honest. And some people thought the design of this guy, you can see it a little bit right there, could be fairly interesting and could be something that would be interesting as a cosmetic. And I think so too. But the fact that he's only listed here with 3 abilities, I'm not too sure if that is really going to be our enemy. Because that doesn't exactly scream depth in terms of a boss fight to me. Maybe if they made like a different version for this specific boss fight, okay, yeah, that could work. But I'm not too sure that is really going to be it. The God of Death, on the other hand, I mean, yeah, sure, but on the other hand, we kind of see him later in some other cutscenes, and he does seem to have like a pretty deep role in the lore. And while I'm not a lore expert, I wouldn't think that they would burn such a character on like a boss fight such as this. Thalassa, on the other hand, was an enemy that, yeah, had a great design, looked pretty fancy, but probably would not return in terms of such a story. So wasn't really too much of a problem to just use her for this boss fight and then be done with her. For like the God of Death, I think that would be another thing. I kind of think it would be weird to fight him in Ravaged Realm and then later on have him return in the story in some form of manner. So I don't really think so. So now for our last entry for that list, and for the enemy really that I think is the most likely to be our Ravaged Realm boss. And the location of where I'm standing might have already given it away. In my opinion, the most likely enemy to be our Ravaged Realm boss is Novik. Novik is a priest we face once, and that has a very, very nice cutscene we can take a look at. Novik is first seen completing this sacrifice ritual in which he turns all of his acolytes into Hipophines and himself into, well, really a boss-worthy enemy that we face there. Fairly easy fight in my opinion. We will look into the abilities in a second, but an absolutely great cutscene. It caught me a little bit by surprise in this season. The cutscene quality has certainly increased, especially over the first one, so this is actually rather nice. Let's see it out for a second. We get to see Novik first time in his real form. Also, we have, of course, me in the cutscene, which is really, really nice as well, with the cosmetics that we pulled in my Rosy Cosmetics video, which you can also watch on the channel. It's also available. Looks pretty sweet in my opinion. And there we have them all turning into Hyperfiends. And I thought the acolytes would actually play a bigger role. I was very impressed by this scene in the trailer, and there he is, Novik, in his boss form, in his corrupted form. And I think he stands a chance to be that. Only problem that I have is he's a little bit small. Like the enemies that we had so far, they were fairly big. And Novik, well, is not really the size of a Thalassa or of a Zetsahara, so I'm not too sure. That they would have to increase his size a little bit. But the thing that had me confused about him was when we first met him into his story. I tried to take a look at him because I thought, well, maybe this is again a Dream Realm situation. For example, Orson, we met in the first story as well, later on became a Dream Realm boss. And I was looking at this guy for the start. I was like, well, for really a normal enemy, this dude has way too much going on in his skills. He way too much death, way too much mechanics for a fight that you basically finish within a few seconds. So I thought, well, that could be a thing. Of course, this could be a thing for Novik as well. Novik, on the other hand, has an ability that doesn't work during the story. It is fairly interesting. I noticed this the first time, actually reported it. We have like General ult with 20 orbs, and then we have this ability. At the start of the battle, 45 seconds in, summons a protective sigil reducing damage taken by 80% as long as the sigil is active. The sigil expires after taking 200 hits, and then the next sentence is relevant. Attracts from the enemy's prime carrier of affection talents count as 5 hits each. Well, the prime carrier is always there when you have a faction skill active. The prime carrier is the hero standing on the faction sigil and receiving the faction talent. And the problem with the Novik fight is I have a screenshot here. So this was when I first noticed that, and I made a screenshot of this fight. And the problem here, you may have already seen it, is right there. This is actually the symbol for just the faction synergy and not for the faction talents. So in this fight with Novik, which is a regular story battle, we don't even have access to the faction talent, thus rendering this ability and this mechanic completely pointless, as we can't really interact with it. There is no prime carrier, so thus nobody can actually reduce this with 5 hits each. Is not possible. And that had me really confused. I reported this, and I can say that I didn't get an answer. I didn't get an answer. I don't know if that indicates that there is a little bit of a secret, but the thing about this is also something that, unless they change Dream Realm, doesn't really indicate that he's going to be there, because, well, there are no prime carriers in Dream Realm. We don't have the skill active there. Thus, this would also be a very useless ability for Dream Realm. The game mode where this would not be useless would actually be Ravaged Realm. In Ravaged Realm, we do indeed have faction talents active, so there we could actually make use of this. Maybe while we're at it, let's go over the other skills as well. AoE damage to frontal enemies within 1 tile arc with a little bit of a stun. And there we have curse the enemy with the highest cumulative damage, that reducing their attack by 15% and dealing 30% per damage per second for 12 seconds. Prioritizes non-summoned enemies. And then again an AoE hit, which kind of is very similar, onto the most crowded area. Okay, so we have quite a few abilities there. And a certain bit of depth, at least with this protective sigil. For the protective sigil, I mean, if we think about it, who would be very good for it? When I'm thinking about multi-hitting heroes that just generate a lot of hits. Maybe Bonnie could be great, maybe Siren already would be great, but the first hero that comes to mind for me against this would probably be a Sinbad, just because he has basically infinite hits if he has enough attack speed within his ult. That deals a ton of damage, delivers a ton of hits, and thus we could really scale this up. Also ult animation, let's check that out. It's an 8 here, should not be that impressive, really isn't. And so this would be, like, for Lightbearer, probably rather interesting together with Sonya. We have a team there, I see. Portugan up in the team, yeah, that could be something, I reckon. But if you don't have Sinbad by now, then probably a really good investment to go for. He was really top damage dealer for the start of the season, and maybe for the next one as well. Probably reckon he will. So definitely rather interesting. I think there is a pretty decent chance that he might be the boss, or that we get somebody completely new. The question is, though, well, is this really going to be cosmetic based on his design? I mean, he was a priest. We kind of already have priest clothes if we check this out. The clothing that we have right there. We just got those priest clothes. Where are they? Right here, the Acolyte robes. And at least in this patch, there doesn't seem to be anything in here that screams, yo, I'm from Ravaged Realm. That is the secret track. This is the armor that many people really wanted. It, by the way, already arrived on the VN server, so should be a very short time until we get to see the Frozen Order robes on the global server as well, and able to acquire them. They look definitely beautiful. This from Velvet Store. This is not interesting enough. Also Velvet Store cosmetics, and there we have, like, the Winter Guardian armor. I don't even know where this is from. This certainly looks cool. It doesn't really say that, it just says cosmetics. But for Winter Guardian there should be then a full set with, like, a back piece as well. And I don't think there is. Yeah, there is no back piece yet. I don't think they put that into the game yet. And didn't put the Ravage Realm set into the game yet. So we have to wait for this a little bit. But I would hope that we go more towards, like, something for the season and not based on the boss design, at least if we go for Novik as a boss. If there's another boss, maybe. But for the season, I'm also not too sure what they would do, really. That is really a question. An armor, I'm a big fan of armor. I really want an armor and, like, a big sword in the game. Like, you know, one of those great swords. That would be cool, but I don't know if they're going to do this. So we have to see. Tell me what you think down in the comments below, and with that, I wish you a great day, and we'll see us in the next one.